Welcome to my channel. Think happy, be happy. Subscribe. Like. A sudden swirl of icy wind. Chapter 2. Transfixed with terror and astonishment, William could not speak. The genie loomed above him. After a moment's silence, he spoke again. You have only to command me. But command him what? To pour the vapor of himself back in the bottle, safe out of sight, and bring the world to rights again? Well, not to rights, exactly. Nothing was right today. And, thinking this, William stood still and silent as, one by one, tears of fright and exhaustion rolled down his cheeks. The genie unfolded his beefy arms and, leaning over, reached down to touch William's cheek with a chilly mist finger. He lifted a tear. You are in trouble. It wasn't even a question. But still William nodded. The genie glanced round the storeroom. Where are the sofas of feathers and rose petals? He asked. The silken hangings and the swaying fans? The sweet music and the lovely dancing girls? The jugs of wine? The dishes of fat geese drowned in sweet berry sauce? Are you imprisoned? If you looked at it that way, thought William, he practically was. And awash with misery and self-pity, he somehow couldn't help nodding a second time. Tell me your jailer's name, the genie cried. Prayers and regrets shall be out of season? I shall heap piles of stones upon his head. Actually, it's my granny, said William. Your own grandmother? You astonish me. Tell me to wing her to a stony place inhabited by wolves. Her body shall be carrion for the crows, prey for the beasts. She didn't mean it, William said hastily. Honestly, she was just a bit cross. Cross? Well, furious, really. The genie settled himself more comfortably on his spiraling coils of mist, and listened carefully as William, gradually pushing aside his fear of the huge shape towering above him, explained how the trouble had started. How, by the time Granny poked her head round the door to invite him for cake and coffee, he had been practicing with the gun for hours, firing the 6 little pellets over and over again, getting better and better, till, if he aimed at the tiny plastic cow, then that was the only animal that fell over. And if he aimed at the little man with the crook, the shepherd, it was he who went spinning over backwards onto the cotton wool snow. If he aimed at the angel, she tumbled off the stable roof. And if he closed one eye and kept his hand as steady as possible, he could even hit something as small as the legs of the ox and ass's feeding trough, and send the tiny plastic baby, in a shower of straw, catapulting out of the manger. Manger. The genie's look of bafflement was turning slowly into one of shock. Did you say shepherd? Angel? Ox and ass? Manger. They're only plastic, said William. And they're not even new. And every time I'd knocked them down, I set them all up again, exactly the same. I even picked all of the straw off the carpets. I can't imagine why she made such a fuss. He looked up to see the genie's face darkening with rage. All William's terror returned. What could a genie do if he lost his temper? Did he have to wait for a command? Perhaps, now he finally realized just how unfair William's granny had been. He might suddenly wing her away and heap her with stones. She's usually very nice, said William. She's usually very patient. Powers of heaven, the genie cried. He seemed to be swelling as if, as his anger grew, he had to grow to hold it. Clearly, if your grandmother's patience was as deep as the sea, you would still try to swim beneath it. It took William a moment to make sense of this. But when he understood what Mustafa meant, he was indignant. Why pick on me? What have I done? The genie looked at him with deep disdain. It seems, to start, you have been born when wits were scant. Are you calling me stupid? The genie folded his arms and stared imperturbably into space. Jawab al-amak sakat, he murmured. The only answer to a fool is silence. William was no coward. And he was suddenly sick of everyone around him folding their arms and going dark in the face for no good reason he could understand. So, folding his own arms in insolent imitation, and glaring up at the genie in his turn, he shouted at him, I have only to command you. That's what you said. I command you to stop being rude, and answer me. What have I done wrong? The genie glanced down. Was he taken with William's courage, or his foolhardiness? Whichever it was, the look on his face suddenly changed, softening from haughty contempt to interest in this boy who had the boldness to stand up and bellow at a genie whose powers of enchantment had, over centuries, held kings and sultans in awe. And then he pursed his lips, and blew. A sudden swirl of icy wind chilled the room, making poor William shiver. And, as he watched, the genie began to shrink. First William thought Mustafa had decided to disappear. Then he realized the genie was simply choosing to blow the bulk of his damp self away, and make himself smaller. Harder and harder the genie blew, and the wind swept round colder and colder. Mustafa sank lower, 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 till, man-sized, he settled comfortably on Captain Flook's trunk. Come. Sit beside me on your father's sea chest. William hesitated before daring to correct him. It was my grandfather's. And he died. Mustafa sighed. Long time ago. Life is a splendid robe, he said. Its only fault is its short length. William perched nervously on the very edge of the chest, and tried to reply in Mustafa's own way of speaking. Your robe must be quite long, though. The genie stared, unsmiling, back through centuries, and into ages yet to come. The robe of enchantment has neither seams nor hem. Did he mean that a genie lives forever? That would explain how he could rise from a trunk in which he'd wasted years and years, and not seem to mind about half a lifetime missed. William pointed to the portrait. So it was grandfather you knew. And his father. And his father, too. Men of honored memory. Mustafa pointed an accusing finger at William. Not one of them would shame himself the way you have today. William spread his hands in exasperation. What have I done? A droplet of advice, the genie said. A man's religion is like his table. One eats off fine white linen, another off scrubbed wood. Some set a feast, and others eat only the most simple dishes. This man will eat in silence, and these ladies eat with song and dance. Would you spit in the food? Spit in the food? Of course not. The genie fell silent and waited while William thought. Did what the genie said make any sense? Had he done something as horrid and upsetting as spitting in someone's food? William thought back. It was true that Granny cared about her battered nativity stable and the little figures. Each year she lifted them carefully from the box, and set them up on the side where everyone could see them. And after Christmas she packed them away just as carefully. They certainly weren't expensive. William had seen them often enough in the shops, and they were half the price of those fierce fighting figures everyone in his class used to collect and paint, before they took up with the guns. So they must be precious in a different way. And the longer William sat quietly beside Mustafa, thinking about it, the clearer it all was. Granny went to church. She went at Easter and at Christmas, and sometimes on Sundays. She kept a cross beside the bed, and she'd been married in church. And once, when the film of Jesus's life came on television, she'd asked William to sit quietly or slip off somewhere else. She was a Christian. She believed in God, and she believed Jesus was God's son, so that tiny plastic baby in the manger meant something to Granny. Something very important. Mustafa was right. Flipping it head over heels with a pellet from a gun was probably even ruder and more hurtful than spitting in food. William felt terrible, shabby, and thought one less and ashamed. More tears forced their way out and rolled down his cheeks, and, once again, the genie stretched out a finger to catch one. Another droplet of advice, he said. He that respects not cannot be respected. I feel simply awful, said William. The genie smiled. May Allah dry your tears and raise your spirits. Wisdom walks slowly, but her steps are sure. William was unconvinced. You said grandfather, and his father too, would never shame themselves the way I have today. No family rocks nothing but angels in the cradle, the genie said. Perhaps Captain Fluke the adventurer lives a second time in you? Which one was he? The genie shrugged, and William realized Mustafa neither knew nor cared how many fathers came between William and Captain Fluke the adventurer. Again he seemed to stare back, through centuries of magic, to grander days in his own land. Tell me, said William, settling on an old rug rolled on the floor beside the sea chest. Tell me the story. The genie stirred. You have only to command me. End of the second chapter. Please subscribe my channel and encourage me to upload more videos.
Like, comment, share, subscribe and press the bell icon and never miss another update.